الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء نبينا وسيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Your Highnesses, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good morning to all of you. On behalf of His Excellency Sheikh Salim bin Mustahil Mashni and United Media Services, I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to each and every one of you to OER's Business Summit 2018. Now, on usual days, I'm actually the head of marketing and corporate comms for Al-Azz Islamic Bank, but today I have the privilege of being an MC and being with you guys here for this summit. My name is Murtada Al-Lawati. I'd like to express our gratitude to our chief guest, His Excellency Sheikh Abdullah bin Salim Salmi, Executive President of the Capital Market Authority, and our guest of honor, His Highness Dr. Adham Al-Saeed, for gracing today's summit with their presence. The OER Business Summit 2018 would not have been possible without the unflinching support of our partners, and on behalf of Oman Economic Review, I'd like to express our gratitude to each and every one of them. A big thanks to our strategic partners, Petroleum Development Oman, Octal, Oman Tel, and the Port of Duqm. Please, a big round of applause to them. Our associates partners, Oman Airports. Again, big round of applause for them as well, please. Our endorsing partners, the Special Economic Zone Authority of Duqm, or CZAD. Our support partners, Tajir Finance and Gulfar Engineering and Contracting. Our insurance partners, Takaful Oman. The digital transformation partner, GBM. Real estate partners, Sandan. Our media partners, Times of Oman and Al Shabiba. Our supporting organizations, Advantage Austria. And our print partner, Oman Printers and Stationers. Big round of applause to all of them, please. Over the last 9 years, OER has hosted several economic debates and business forums on issues of national importance by bringing policymakers and various stakeholders to exchange viewpoints on the state of Oman's economy. This year's summit will explore Oman's long-term economic roadmap under the topic Vision 2040, Making Way for Change. And we're privileged to have His Excellency Sheikh Abdullah bin Salim Al-Salmi amongst us, as His Excellency is very closely involved with the Vision 2040 plan as the head of its Economy and Development Committee. Today's summit is going to be live on Twitter. The Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn social media handles are at BusinessLiveMe, while the hashtag is hashtag OER Business Summit. We encourage all of you to follow, comment, and post, and of course tweet on the proceedings using the hashtag and the handles. And the highlight of today's summit will be uploaded onto YouTube in the next few days. Now I'd like to invite Ms. Alpana Roy, Executive Vice President, United Media Services, on stage to deliver the welcoming address. Please help me in welcoming her to the stage.
Your Highnesses, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of His Excellency Sheikh Salim bin Mustahil Al-Mashni and UMS, I would like to welcome you to the 9th edition of the OER Business Summit 2018. The topic of today's summit is Vision 2040, Making Way for Change. And it's our honor to have amidst us our chief guest, His Excellency Sheikh Abdullah bin Salim Al-Salmi, Executive President, Capital Market Authority, and the head of the Economy and Development Committee for Vision 2040. Thank you, Your Excellency, for gracing our event today. Recently, while I was crystal glazing the future of our business, which many of you must also be doing with the business planning and formulating policies for the coming year, I was reflecting on how it would be to plan for 2 decades ahead. In this intensely dynamic business environment, as corporate captains, we are all aware of the challenges that we face to even plan for a year or two for our respective businesses and organizations. Drafting the blueprint for a nation's 20 years of socio-economic growth is a Herculean task, we all know. Policymakers tasked with chalking out Oman's Vision 2040 are confronted with a lot of imponderables. Our world is changing at an accelerated pace, characterized by unpredictable political and economic developments, bewildering technological innovations, the speedy adoption of new inventions, and to top it all, artificial intelligence. All this is bound to rewrite the business landscape we are accustomed to for decades. While on one hand, so many traditional industries are facing an existential crisis, so many competencies are getting redundant, On the other, there is excitement for the tremendous opportunities that are facing us today. Put simply, the kind of change, the magnitude of change, and the speed at which change is taking place will transform the world that we live in today and impact our lives for good. Oman will be celebrating the 40th anniversary of its National Day in a few weeks from now. His Majesty Sultan Qaboos bin Said, 48 years ago, set the country on the path of the Blessed Renaissance, ushering in a new era of economic growth, social development, and prosperity. Today, we are reaping the fruits of that great vision and policy initiatives that went into building the Sultanate on formidable pillars for nearly 5 decades. Oman is embarking upon the next phase of this momentous journey with Vision 2040. Its goal is not just diversifying the economy away from its dependence from the hydrocarbons resources, but preparing the nation to meet the future halfway. The vision rests on 3 key pillars: economy and development, people and society, and governance and institutional performance. We have amongst us today the best of the best strategic minds, business experts, thought leaders, and futurists to engage in discussions revolving around these key themes. And we hope that we will come up with suggestions that will contribute towards creating an enabling and conducive environment to achieve the goals set forth. Finally, at UMS, it is our constant endeavor to present our stakeholders with innovative platforms that keep them ahead of the business curve. And it gives me immense pleasure to share our latest initiative, Business Live Middle East. BusinessLiveME.com is more than just a business news website. It offers an all-inclusive coverage for news, views, opinions, and analysis from Oman and across the Middle East for an engaged audience of business and opinion leaders. It immaculately delivers thought-provoking features on business and economy, as well as lifestyle, culture, travel, design, technology, and much more for an audience that is intensely curious. Our readers think globally and are focused on solving the big problems and moving the world forward. And BusinessLiveME.com aims to enhance their news reading experience with comprehensive and in-depth coverage, cross-category content, and contemporary user interface. I can go on and on about this because it's our new baby and we are all very passionate about it. But as we all know, that in the digital space, it's the actual experience of the consumer that counts more than anything else. So I will leave the stage now with a short video on businessliveme.com and a request to all of you to please visit us. Wishing you an enjoyable and meaningful summit. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Roy, and hope all of you check out and subscribe to the business updates from businessliveme.com. Now, it's my honor to invite on stage His Highness Sayyid Dr. Adham bin Turki Al Saeed, Assistant Professor of Economics at the College of Economics and Political Science at the Sultan Qaboos University, to deliver the keynote address of OER's Business Summit 2018. His Highness Dr. Adham has a master's degree from New York University and did his PhD from the University of Western Australia. He is also the co-founder of the firm for business and economic consulting. He is currently a member of the Sharia Supervisory Board in Al Muzn Islamic Bank. His Highness was the team leader of SQU's research who evaluated Vision 2020 and developed early concepts for Vision 2040. The topic of his presentation is Oman 2040, New Horizons. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming His Highness Dr. Adham bin Turki Al Saeed to the stage.
عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Your Excellencies, dear guests, it gives me a great pleasure today to share my perspective and my thought and some of the work that I and my colleagues at Sultan Qaboos University and at the firm have done in regard to strategic planning and more so on Oman's future visions, bi'idhnillah ta'ala. 3 years ago, myself and some of my colleagues at the Sultan Qaboos University, prior to starting the firm, had been asked to evaluate Vision 2020 and later on to shed some perspective along with some other stakeholders as well. And one of the things that we asked ourselves at that point in time, was there an actual need to create another vision? Was there an actual need to go through a process of engaging society, various stakeholders, or was 2020 enough to set the path for future developments? What we found out when we've revised 2020 and looked analytically at some of its successes and shortcomings was that 2020 was very well fitted for the era where it was developed in the 1990s. However, 2020 was not successful in achieving many of its strategic objectives due to its own design, but also due to the changeable factors, crises, economic conditions that followed immediately after the initiation of Vision 2020. Changing times meant that 2020 was not or no longer adaptable or useful for its purposes. This is not to say that it did not achieve certain positive outcomes. However, the main outcome from Vision 2020 was economic diversification away from dependence on a single source of income for the government, a single viable sector for the economy. Unfortunately, we have not been successful, and I say we because all of us were responsible at that given point in time. We were also faced with various domestic, regional, and global changes. These changes have taken form in many shapes and forms: demographic, economic, urban settings, climate change, and technological. And what we find that many of these trends have overtaken our ambition and have changed our direction, so much so that we needed to sit down and ask ourselves in the 9th five-year plan, are we on the right path? Are we doing the right thing? And sure enough, we found that we needed adjustment. However, that adjustment was not aligned to 2020 specifically, but was aligned more to the current conditions. By 2030, many of the observers see that demographics are going to play a key role. For Oman specifically, a young population that is requiring a different growth model, a different development model from our economy. We're looking at economic conditions where energy, oil is no longer king, but other aspects are beginning to shift emphasis. This has direct impact on Oman specifically. Urban settings mean that livable societies and cities are demanding more and more attention. It is not simple to give someone a plot of land and ask them to build a home anymore. We're talking about smart cities, cities that serve the citizens. We're talking about climate change, that we're beginning to see more and more impact on our local economy and global economy. People's livelihood, coastal areas being hammered continuously by typhoons or tsunamis or whatnot. All of these are beginning to put a lot of pressure on the demands of development and future trends. Technological changes, as mentioned earlier in the earlier introduction, are by far leaving us behind, especially in this part of the world where we're finding it very challenging to get our heads around all of the things that we talk about, not simply artificial intelligence and blockchain, but how did that impact? What skills are required for the future? What is happening that we are not paying attention to? What does this mean for Oman? Hypothetically speaking, if we look at Oman's income trajectory, Oman currently is categorized as a high-income country, according to the World Atlas or World Bank Atlas method, which measures the gross national income for Oman per person. So this leaves us in approximately the area of about $14,000 to $15,000, according to that definition. Now, what we notice is that if Oman, at this juncture, does not change its economic model, it's at risk falling behind and falling into the middle income, which in itself means that the standard of living in a very rough measure of well-being is potentially going to decline. Now, some of you might argue, we don't notice that, we're doing quite well, we're at a much better place than we used to be. Arguably, yes. However, in the past few years, the economic downturn had had some serious impact on Oman's economic well-being. This is the citizen, this is every one of us that gets to enjoy less benefits from the fruit of development on average. This is not to ring the bell of alarm or anything. However, it is more of an important juncture that we're at that puts 2040 into perspective. 2040 is about improving the standard of well-being in Oman. This means not for this generation alone, for the future generations. So while we have a positive trend, we are at a juncture where we are challenged. 2040 is important because when we look at the sustainable development goals measured by the rankings and indices that are presented by the UN and other organizations, not only Oman, but the region isn't faring very well according to these indicators. Again, we see very few greens and more reds and yellows and oranges, which means that even when we look at 2030, not even 2040, we are far behind in achieving some of the key development goals that are very relevant for Oman 2040 today. How are we going to steer? How are we going to develop? What are our priorities basically on across 17 areas that directly impact Omanis, businesses, government, and the international community? Recently, Oman has done very well for itself to improve more than 14 positions in the Global Competitiveness Index, and there is much to celebrate in that area. However, I should be a bit cynical here and look at the right-hand side of this particular picture when we talk about innovation capacity, business dynamism, ICT adoption, which are the key things that we all talk about when we talk about future trends. And we ask ourselves, where does Oman want to be? Oman is doing very well, lillahi alhamd, in macroeconomics as things have stabilized more recently. Oman is doing very well in terms of its institutions, generally speaking, in its infrastructure. But those things are not sufficient to take us to the next level of development. We are still based on the same economic model. 2040 needs to be that transition, that transformation that we look at. There are multitude of challenges. There are multitude of priorities that are pulling at us and pushing at us, and they're all interacting together. In 1995, when we sat, and some of you must have been there, we talked about specific things, about private sector, human resource development, all of those silos that we tried to merge together under various pillars. However, at that point in time, we failed to realize that many of these pillars are interactive together. They're no longer pillars, but they're surfaces that are moving in various directions, and they're interacting. And that's exactly what is happening here. Whether we talk about institutional capacity to deliver the new model of development, whether we're talking about labor markets that are delivering that job creation sustainably, whether we're talking about entrepreneurship and innovation that is interactive across various areas, whether we're talking about business dynamism and whether that is producing the next growth model that we are looking for. So all of these boil down to how do we improve economic prosperity across socio and economic values, if you like. So 2040 is meant to be the solution to all of those concerns. So when we ask why 2040, it's for all those reasons and more. What is 2040 going to do, basically? If we look back at the tremendous effort that's been done by the Office of 2040 and all of those involved, we have come a long way across the 18 or 20 months that has been. This is a very long-winded process, but I'm sure many of you were engaged in the various business and public engagements where the teams have went across Oman to find out exactly what we want for Oman. Today, perhaps, is a moment of celebration that we have done the planning process for 2040 in a completely different way than 25 years ago. In fact, we are doing what we should have done in 1995. Engage the public, engage businesses, engage all stakeholders. Today, we're just 2 steps from creating the final version of what we think Oman Vision 2040 should be. We're not there yet. However, those particular areas, if I may call them pillars, right? Public, people and society, economy and development, governance and institutional performance are becoming the foundations for that vision. These in themselves do not present a vision. These are guidelines of where we want to be. These are priorities. So if we think of the economy and development, part of the first panel's discussion, we are talking about creating a wealth creation model for Oman. The economic model that fits into the 21st century, that is going to take Oman to the next level. We're talking about ensuring balanced distribution of wealth across the country in the governance, preserving environmental stability, and also building world-class infrastructure. Now, these are some of the key elements that Oman Vision 2040 office is focusing on. These are not my ideas. However, what I'd like to pay attention to here is the fact that we need to think in the big picture. These are specifics, and under them there are many strategic initiatives, and there are going to be many initiatives that are going to follow through. But the focus here is to ask ourselves, what do we want from our economy? We've worked in a traditional model where oil and gas was the driver. We're talking about logistics today and tourism. These are very microscopic visions of the Oman's economy. We need to think a bit bigger. Where do we want to place Oman in this big picture, at least from the economic perspective? The Vision Office also highlights, according to all the consultation, that people in society needs to focus on enhancing family and community health and well-being, upholding the Omani identity, and developing entrepreneurship and national technical capabilities. Now, these are very specific issues that we're looking at. But again, when we talk about Oman Vision 2040, how does this vision serve the Omani community, serves everyone living in Oman? How does it make me want to give? How innovate? How does it attract talent to Oman? How do we create livable environments which are sustainable, that provide what people want? Governance. This is perhaps one of the most often overlooked sort of pillars or conditions, not because it's not important, because we're so engaged in the economic and social aspects, we forget to make all of those gel together. We need a very strong framework for governance. Governance not only for government to provide its programs, to provide its budgets and whatnot, but governance on how to make everyone work together and understand their roles. This is not a government initiative. This is not a business initiative. This is not a public initiative. It is a Oman initiative, meaning every single one of us is a stakeholder. And without a proper governance framework, there is no way for me to know how do I participate. There's no way for you to know how do you participate. Who do we hold accountable when Vision 2020 or 2040 does not reach its expectation? Right? We often like to point fingers. However, a governance framework will hold everyone accountable, so we can come back to the table and ask, how do we go on about correcting it? How do we go about adapting it as well? Now, my thoughts on how to develop the vision. Obviously, there's a lot of work that's been done in the engagement phase and developing the national priorities. So this is not to take away from the fantastic effort that has been done for everyone. However, we haven't reached the pinnacle yet. We are at that stage. We've been climbing this pyramid at every stage where we're asking ourselves, what are our priorities? What do we need to do about them? How do we measure them? And all of that. But to come up with a vision needs to be a very clear statement to every single one of us here today and in Oman, that this is what we want Oman to be. Whether I am a student at university, whether I'm an entrepreneur starting business, whether I'm in a conglomerate, I'm a decision maker, a policy maker, everyone needs to know what Oman wants to be. And this is very important because this affects everything that we do. Whether we invest, whether we choose to work in a particular career, whether we choose to trade more with certain countries in certain areas, what type of things do we want for Oman? To get there, we need to get to the top of this pyramid and understand. And I think we're almost there in terms of the process. However, once we're there, we need to believe in it. It should not be something in the back of our mind, but it should be something always ahead of us as we aspire to reach that. And visions should not be complicated documents. The strategic direction can fill pages and pages. However, the vision should be very, very clear to all of us. This is what Oman is going to be in 2040, inshallah ta'ala. That vision cannot be achieved without the right national development strategies. These are the key elements for people, society, economy, and development, and the institutions. This is where we talk about how do we go about it? What are the individual areas that we're interested in? Those strategies cannot be left on paper. They have to be implemented through these 5-year plans. We have done very well for ourselves over the last 20-odd years in our 5-year plans. However, the 9th year plan proved to be a transformational way of doing it. We engaged more, we explained more, we continued to use the map as our compass to reach to where we want to be. We haven't achieved all of our objectives. However, having said that, we have done very well into transitioning from the 2020 plan into the 2040. We should not forget that. So it's absolutely essential. One thing that we also failed to do in 2020 that we should be very focused in 2040 is linking our budgets to the plan. We tend to think of our budgets as a tool of executing programs or executing. Budgets are executionary methods to what we put in our strategy. Does my budget align? Does my program in the budget align to that? How do we link all of those levels is critically important for 2040 to be successful, bi'idhnillah ta'ala. Now, a lot of people tend to think of these strategies as individual strategies and, we should forget about 2020 because I don't know about it and whatnot. But these are all intertwined and interlinked. The big picture is made up of small blocks. These small blocks represent our 5-year plans. And 5-year plans are critical for realigning the process. And even the 5-year plans we've realized that need execution programs such as Tanfeed or anything similar. These things need to work together. Where 2020 ends, this is where we start 2040. It's a continuous, we are building. We are not building from scratch, but we're building on what we have done, the positive, the strength, and we realign ourselves as we move forward into the future. So, in my mind, Vision 2040 needs to really focus on several elements. It has to be people-centric. So just having the word people into our pillars or priorities is a good start. But we should always go back and ask ourselves, are we serving the better good of the people? Are we providing the individual, the citizen in Oman with what they need to move into the future? So we're not simply talking about jobs, we're talking about all sorts of opportunities, whether they're socio or economics. 2040 needs to be holistic. 2040 cannot be focused on a sector and say sector X is going to take us into the future. That is very micro-thinking. That is what we do when we look at the 5-year plans. The bigger picture is, how does this plan enhance Oman into the future? We need to have broad consensus on what it means to have Oman 2040. The Office of 2040 has done a fantastic job at talking to everyone. And the 3 areas or pillars are a product of that. It is not someone in an office who sat and came up with those ideas, but it was consensus across broad various stakeholders as well, whether they were young people, CEOs, policymakers, anyone living basically in Oman who's been engaged. The other thing that we need to work on are linkages. Let's not forget that visions do not execute themselves. They need people to link them. So all of our action plans, all of our goal setting needs to work together and linked between the short term, the medium term, and the long term. Governance, governance, governance. Governance for government to execute, governance for businesses to be able to interact, communicate, for our legislative bodies to be able to interact and understand what is going on, for the public to be, how do we hold ourselves accountable, not others, but ourselves accountable if it's not clear what is my role and what is your role. Finally, we need to work on the implementation. We can have beautiful processes, we can have beautiful infographics about what we want to do, but if we do not know how to implement effectively, if we cannot monitor and evaluate and then adapt, we cannot hope to succeed in the future. These are very critical. It might seem mediocre to mention these, but it is critical. What we found when we visited 2020 was the implementation was the challenge, but more importantly, the adaptation. This is not to say achieved or not to achieved, or this is a dashboard of greens and yellows and red. This is more about what do I do about it when I haven't achieved it? How do I realign my process? So in the end, I'd really like to summarize that Vision 2020 is a compass, and that compass will have to be realigned continuously. Today, we hope to see ideas of how to do that, ideas on how to strengthen. You need to ask yourself, what is my role in 2040? Rather than asking someone else to tell you what is your role. How do you contribute in those various areas? And I hope this gives some perspective on the discussions, inshallah, tonight. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Highness, for your insightful information that you shared with us. I'd like to now invite on stage Mr. Sanjay Quatra, Partner, Assurance, Ernst & Young. Mr. Quatra is a partner with EY and leads the assurance practices in Oman and Qatar. He leads assurance engagements for many of the large corporates in Oman and Qatar and maintains advisory relations with their executive management and board of directors. Now, Mr. Quatra is a subject matter expert on IFRS and part of EY's MENA technical executive team. His presentation is titled, What's After, What's Next? So please help me in welcoming him up on stage.
Good morning, Your Excellencies, Highness, and ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, OER, for organizing this summit again. Another successful summit. I can see too many business leaders in this room, so many senior government officials in this room, to basically come together and then do a brainstorming on Vision 2040. The presentation which I just saw was really very encouraging. Yeah, so I think what I will do, I will be very careful now because there are a lot of things which will be repetitive, and I think this is the trend now. Everybody is going to talk about transformation because that's the end thing, and this is how the world is moving forward. Whatever was relevant 10 years back is no longer relevant now. And whatever is happening now will not be relevant in another 5 years. I think the pace of change is so dramatic right now, is that I think it will be difficult for us to cope up, as country, as well as in of the corporate worlds. And we will look into a few things, how the things are changing. I will also talk about some of the trends currently, how we are seeing things happening in Oman, and what are the global trends. What are the major trends? What are the transformation changes happening as going forward? Because we are talking about vision, we need to be clear how the things will be going forward. They will be really very different. Yeah, I think now when you hear about a self-driving car, you think it's a old news. Nobody owns it still. Yeah, but I think we feel it's a very old news already. This is how the things are changing. Be very honest, and I think let's talk about some social and cultural changes. How many times we check our smartphones in a day? That's, they are all very addictive technologies, and this is how they are being manufactured, and this is how the data is basically analyzed, and the manufacturers and the contents are provided to you which are of your interest, yeah? And then you become so addictive to this. We all do that. Yeah, it started in the past, but now I can see that everywhere. It's a very common trend. It's a very common phenomenon. We don't have crystal balls, to see what will be the oil prices going forward, or how the economies, will react going forward. But I think there are some very, very clear, visible trends which we really need to look into it, digest them, appreciate them, and I think scale it them, and then let's start working on our Vision 2040. I think, as Alpna rightly said, 2040, it's a long shot, but we definitely need to get it right. And it has to be keep on evaluated on a regular basis, because whatever we are going to do now may become obsolete in another five years from now. So this is again something which needs to be looked at. We did a survey as Ernst & Young, global survey, and part of that there was a large participation from the leaders in the GCC. 53% of the respondents there, they are all very senior executives. They said artificial intelligence and RPA, robotics, automation processes, they are the top priority on their board agendas these days. When we compare it to the global, it's only 46%. What's the reason for that? I think we are slightly lagging behind, but now you can see there's a lot of push. There is a lot of push on this. The governments are leading it, and if you really look into it, there was an offer from Saudi Arabian government to grant a citizenship to the first robot. There is the Minister of Artificial Intelligence, being nominated for UAE. These things are making a huge stir in the market. And if you really look into Oman, we have got already our digital strategy in place. We are doing, some of things which are really fantastic, e-visas, e-governance. There is a lot which is happening, and it is going to happen as going forward. What I will do is, before we go further down into my presentation, I have got only very few slides. They have got some silly pictures, but we will discuss them as we go around. I think let's do a reality check first of all. Let's see, things which we were using in the past, are they relevant today, and are we able to recognize some of those? Yeah. This is not very old. We all used it. Yeah, I have got two daughters. My younger one, she finds it very difficult to understand how these things used to operate. Yeah, she bought a camera, it's a toy camera with the Teletubbies and Tinkerbell and all that. That has got a role attached to it. And then she was struggling to understand how it will be used. And then I explained her, this is how we used to click pictures. It used to be a roll of 32 pictures. You click them, you're not able to see. What is the result? Are you smiling? Your eyes are closed? It's we don't know. You will take it to the lab. The pictures will be developed, and then you will see. Oh, okay, this one is better or this is not better. She started laughing about that, and she said, "What about this music thing? How do you used to work around this? So if you have to go to another song, what do you used to do it?" And then I explained her, we need to press a button and then it's a forward. And she said, then how do you know the next song has arrived or it's not there? So just to cut the long story short, this is not very old. There are so many things. I kept something which is still very old. If you really look into from smartphones, BlackBerry, how many of us use BlackBerry in the past? This is very, very recent, just few years before. Today, how many of them use it? I think none. Nokia is gone. The Yahoo is gone. So these are all recent developments, but they are already out of the market. So this is the point I want to make, that the things are changing very rapidly. Whatever is relevant today may not be relevant in 5 years' time from now. And the pace of change is really, really phenomenal. And I think as business leaders, as senior government officials, we need to really understand this. When we are working about our vision 2040, we need to have two strategies. Two strategies. When I say two strategies, one something which is relevant now, which is your short-term strategy, one which will be relevant after 5 years, and you need to keep on evolving that. And then is basically you also need to look into the long-term strategy because things will be very different, and we'll talk about some of the trends going forward. I think another way of looking at the change is I will just like to show you another picture which will put forward the market capitalization, the global market capitalization of some of the leading companies, and you will be able to see and appreciate where the world is moving and why we keep on talking about artificial intelligence, RPA, virtual reality. These are not the buzzwords any longer. These are the realities, and they have to be implemented. I hope it's visible, from the back. But this is 2008 and 2018. These are the leading global companies by market capitalization. 2018 was done couple of months, and I think now it's already changed. Because in the last few weeks you must be reading about Amazon and Microsoft, going up and down. Somebody lost 61 billion in a day in terms of the market capitalization, and the owner lost 11 billion. $11 billion, we are talking about something like our deficit. Yeah, these are huge numbers. So these are just the technology companies is going forward. If we look at 2008, you will find a lot of oil companies. You will find some of the large telcos there as well. But once you look into 2018, it's very different. It's really very different. You got Apple there, the largest company by capitalization. It touched 1 trillion, it came down, whatever. So you got Apple, you got Google, you got Microsoft, you got Amazon, you got Facebook. But look at the trend. There are two companies which are Chinese companies in that. Yeah? And they are actually equivalent of Facebook, and they are actually equivalent of Amazon. So that's the power of the population and the size which China has. The point I'm trying to make here is the technology now dominates in all the fronts, and maybe we can say that right now, the oil is slightly out of the race. And with the more development of the green technologies, the battery operated cars, Tesla, we keep on reading about Tesla. This will all have further implication over the oil economy. And I think therefore it's very important that we really understand, for Oman, diversification is the key thing, which we need to really look into it. How are we going to do it? A clear roadmap has to be there, and we'll touch about some of the trends as going forward in the following slides. And I'm sure, when we'll do this in next few years, again, it will be very different. It will be very different, yeah. In 2008, between 2008 and 2007 was the time when PetroChina, it touched 1 trillion, but that was just an unusual transaction when it happened. But now you don't find any oil and gas companies, in the list of this top capitalization. Some of the trends for Oman, most of you are very well aware of it. I'll just touch upon a few things. Since 2014, once we have the oil prices declining, we started discussing about the deficit. The deficit was very high earlier. It has started coming down. There are a lot of reforms which have been implemented, and then we are seeing a lot of the positive sides coming of that. But still, there is a lot to be done. There is a lot to be done, and I'll touch upon some of the key items. The first one is not an indication of our stock market performance. I think the reason I bought this graph here is if you really look into it, the oil price and our MSM 30 index are no longer correlated. Yeah, if you look into it up to 2010, the moment oil price used to go up or down, the stock also used to fluctuate. But after that, it's completely different. Once we had the financial crisis, it's very, very different now. So we need to really understand what are the reasons behind that. We have a very excellent regulator here. We have a very strong infrastructure. What's missing is basically there is not enough depth, in terms of the number of companies which we have. The banking sector is the most active out of these, and we have got few other companies, the large companies who are active into that. But apart from that, you will find the depth is actually missing within our stock market, and that's something again comes down from diversification. So we have got the infrastructure ready, we have got the guidelines ready. It's basically a matter of you need to have more and more companies coming up on the stock market, for an IPO and various other things. We need to have a market which is liquid. What we have right now is the free float is very less. If you really look into most of the companies which we have, and as a result, the liquidity is less and there is not enough trading. So that's again something is a food for thought for all of us to look into it, because this is a very important indicator for any country, and we need to really look into it. Even after all the reforms and the oil price recovery, we had a decline in 2017, compared to 2016. Whereas if you really look into it globally, the markets have changed. But again, the pace of change is again very strong there. They are all coming down as we speak right now. So that's on the MSM. Reinforcement of fiscal reforms and a significant decline in deficit. As we have all seen, there have been a lot of discussion on diversification, public-private partnership, and a lot of reforms have been introduced. There has been a gradual removal of subsidies, which was the right way of doing it. It was done very gradually so that people, got absorbed used to it, and it has not had a very significant implication. The deficit in 2016 was around, if I'm not wrong, around 5.3 Omani Riyal billion. It came down to 3.7 in the following year. And this year it is budgeted at around 3 billion Omani Riyal. 3 billion, it has been budgeted based on an oil price of $50 an hour, $50 a barrel. And if you really look into it currently, I think we have already secured somewhere around $68, a barrel. And we will touch the year-end by a slightly higher number on that. So I think that's also a very clear indication that our budgeted deficit for the current year is expected to be lower than what it was budgeted. So it's 3 years. Things are definitely improving, and as we see them. The government was successful in cutting down its expenditure in 2016 as well as 2017. But I think there is a limit up to which that could be done, because we also need to look into the diversification, infrastructure, and future investments. But I think what the point here is, we are on the right track. And the momentum continues to happen. Because there was a gradual introduction of reforms, because there is a significant element is the social obligation, the government has increased the public debt over a period of time. If you really look into it, in 2017, we raised international funds of almost around 7 billion. At the beginning of this year, in 2018, we had additional bonds being raised of around 6.5 billion during the year, and the response was quite successful, from the international investors. But as a result, our debt to GDP ratio has really increased. From 2014 to 2017. When we talk about 2017, we were almost around 40%, which is quite high. And I think that was one of the reasons the rating agencies reacted to that, and we know where we stand in terms of our rating. But again, This is something which really needs to continue. We had seen a lot of reforms coming up. We are discussing about, a possible VAT implementation next year. Yes, it is going to increase, cost ultimately on the consumer, but it will be absorbed. It will be absorbed going forward. As and when we all start improving our performance, all these additional costs will be really absorbed. Rating downgrades, but the fundamentals have improved. Now ratings are basically forward-looking statements. They don't look at the current state. They basically look into it, what are the expectations going forward, and it goes a lot with the sentiment as well. As we speak, we have a S&P has basically rated us, below investment grade, but with a stable outlook. We also got Moody's and Fitch. Moody's and Fitch have basically rated us above investment grade, but the outlook is negative. So we really need to see how the things will evolve going forward. I think as these rating agencies start seeing, a significant reforms being, actually coming up on this mainstream, as well as introduction of diversification and improved performance in terms of the oil prices, I think it will become stable. But overall, we are definitely in a better position compared to where we were in 2016, 2017. The next point is, as this is one of the discussion point in whichever board meetings I go these days, this is a question which generally comes up, which is on the exchange rate. I think there is a strong commitment from Oman to be committed to the fixed exchange rate with the US dollar, because it works in our favor. And I think we have the ability and intention of doing it. But it also had an impact on this, because if you are linked to US dollar and the Fed is increasing the interest rate time and time again, you also need to do it. Otherwise, it will have a serious implication on your economy. And also in 2016 and 2017, we have seen 2016, I think we had some high level of liquidity constraints. 2017 was really improved, and in 2018 is very much relaxed. But because of these, the cost of borrowing has really increased, and I think we are all well aware of this. But the new loans which are granted, or the new deposits which are given now are definitely slightly better than compared to what it was in 2016. So again, it is going to add up to the momentum for the economy. The banking sector is stable, very strongly capitalized. We have seen the 6 months results. The profits for most of the banks have really improved there. The asset quality is great. We again got a very strong regulator there. And the banking system and telcos are actually the backbone of any economy. They can take the economy to a new high, and if they don't perform, it becomes a real problem. So we are in a good position in terms of all our banks within Oman. So again, something positive to look forward. Leveraging government strategies, I think mainly I want to talk about PPP, public-private partnership. This is not new for Oman. We just keep on saying it's a new initiative. Really look into our oil blocks concession. They are in a way PPPs done for the long, for the past many years. The power and water plants, they are very successful PPP models which Oman has embarked over a period of time. Now what we really need to look into it is, I think the leadership is there, because this drive is coming from the government. It will definitely go forward. You got various other interesting sectors which will get a benefit from PPP, be it hospitals, which is healthcare, education, construction, and then I think we'll see a lot happening going forward on PPPs. Employment creation and SME development. This is again a very critical thing for us, and especially employment creation. I think employment creation, we are looking forward, in terms of the development which are coming up in Dukum. What we really need to have there is the industries which are really, really labor intensive. So we can come out with various new jobs. And we should also look into it like fintechs, small organization coming up with the 50 people, 60 people. They can develop some ideas here, and things could be exported outside. We have got very large manufacturers, automobile manufacturers in the neighboring countries. Like in India or in China. The parts could be produced here and then they could be exported. So there is a lot of potential. The free zones, there are plenty of free zones in Oman, and I think I'm seeing a lot of discussions happening on that. So again, something very positive. Digital advantage, we have a young population, completely savvy about technology. We have got a very strong infrastructure on that. So again, something which is good for us. Current recovery of oil prices is a welcome development, but we really need to be very careful here because now oil prices move. It's really somebody having a crystal ball to understand what the oil prices, how the oil prices are going to be next year. We were at $40, it comes down to 50, now we are at 70. Something happens, new sanctions on Iran or sanctions lifted from Iran, they have got a significant implication. The production, the OPEC plus production cut last year has really improved the oil prices. So I think in the short term, this all looks good. But in the medium term, we need to really understand the oil prices, at what level they are going to be sustainable, and how are they going to be maintained. Uh, can we cut down on our budget deficit break even, from $80, $85? Can we reduce it? I'm not sure about it, but actually, if we look into the diversification and introducing new sources of revenue, things will be definitely different for us. Oman economy is expected to outperform in 2019. That's you all would have seen it. This has come up from IMF. They came out in April. There was another update on that. Things have improved. I think the next year in 2019, there is a statement made by IMF that Oman is going to outperform other GCC economies. Again, something for us to really look into it and be very positive about it. Cautious about regional stability and global political developments. 2016, people in UK, voted about Brexit, and then you see what are the implications. Elections in US, for the highest office, and we got a new president, and look at the implications which we have. Regionally, if you really look into it, there is a war going on in Yemen. It has got a serious implication. That's our neighbor. Or the blockade on Qatar, which is very recent. It started last year. How it impacted the whole country. I think these are the geopolitical things which this is again a trend which is coming up because things are so different nowadays compared to how they were in the past. So we need to be very careful about this. We will talk about some of the trends, the global trends on the following slide, which is the global mega trends, the way we are seeing it. How are they going to change the world going forward? Largely dependent on technological developments, digital advantages, artificial intelligence, but only artificial intelligence is not the disruptor. There are various other things. I think political I talked about. We also need to be careful about the climate change. I think since 2007, we have seen a lot of activity in Oman. We had the cyclone Gonu in 2007. It had a serious implication. In 2 years, down the line, we had another one. And this year we had one in Salalah. So this is actually happening, and this is again a trend, in terms of the disruption, not only for the region. This is happening, throughout the globe. So that's also a disruptor and a trend, which needs to be really looked into it when we are talking about our vision 2040, because it goes down to where are you going to set up your industries, where are you going to set up your offices. What type of people are going to come and work for you? Are you going to really motivate them? Are you going to really engage them? People don't want to come to office and work now because people are really looking into flexible working environment. Maybe remote locations will gain more advantage. Whether it will make any sense for people to spend on some fancy offices right now, whether they will be relevant going forward. So I think they all need to be part of our strategy going forward. I think these are some really very important points. These are the mega trends which are reshaping the future. Some of them have been already addressed, when we looked into the presentation for 2040. And I'm really glad to see that most of the things were addressed in that. The first one, which is, is the industry redefined. What do you mean by industry redefined? It means basically the industries are now actually erasing their boundaries. Look at Amazon. I fail to understand whether it's a technology company, or it's a retailer, or it's a logistic company, or it is actually everything. What else they can do? I think they can do everything else, if that thing is of interest to them. So we really need to look into it. Collaboration is going to happen. Mergers, consolidations are going to happen because this is going to be the trend going forward. The industries are going to operate very, very differently. If we will not change, we are not talking about a competitive advantage. We are talking about our existence going forward. So you really need to look into it, whichever industry we are, and the key pillars which we have worked out currently here for our diversification, how relevant they will be going forward. Future of work. Uh, Future of work is really very interesting because it goes down to the cities, the smart cities which we discussed earlier. What are going to be the implications of those smart cities and others, in future for us? Where you should set up your offices, how you should work on it, who's going to come and work for you, what type of technology you're going to use it. These are unimaginable as of now because things are really evolving at a very high pace. Super consumer, artificial intelligence, again data. The way people are going to buy things going forward is going to be very different compared to what we see right now. Do we really need to see so many retail outlets going forward? I don't think so. E-commerce is still in infancy here in the region, but it's just a matter of time. And I think we will see this thing evolving very fast as going forward. The consumers will they will demand, the perfect solutions for them. They are not going to budge on that. They are so much aware of what they need, and the options are phenomenal. You don't have to go out and buy. You open an app, you get 100 options on that. Somebody is going to do a very quick analysis for you and say, this is the best thing for you. This is just the beginning. And when we are talking about Vision 2040, it's going to be completely different way how the consumers are going to behave and how the consumers are going to respond to our businesses currently. Behavioral design. I think social media, we need to really understand the impact of social media and how it is going to evolve going forward. We talked about the smartphone addictions and various other things. It is very important for organizations, the business leaders, to understand the behavioral pattern going forward of your consumers, the technologies which you are using, and various other things which you have. So I think that's something is going to change and evolve quite significantly. Adaptive regulations. When things keep on changing on a regular basis, how do you keep your regulations updated? How are you going to determine the regulations for these matters? I think they have to be adaptive going forward. They cannot be prescriptive because you keep on changing the regulation. This is how it is going to happen. Industry and regulators are going to work together going forward for working out the regulations. Remapping urbanization, I think we briefly touched about on this particular slide, this particular point as well. The city of future, how it is going to work, who's going to stay there. Maybe things will become so expensive going forward in the major cities which we have. I can give you an example of India. There's a city called Bangalore there. It's known for IT innovations and development. You got all the big companies, have their offices there. The new startups, they are no longer going to Bangalore. They are going to second-tier cities or third-tier cities. Why it is that? Because one, it is cheap, for them to hire, set up their offices. And second is technology is already there. We are also connected, so we don't need to go to the mega city only to work on. And look at the traffic, how it will be going forward, what type of parking spaces you will have, what type of rentals you will have. So which is going to be your next city going forward? The main cities for the country, they are going to evolve very, very significantly. Look at us, we had all the banks have their headquarters at CBD building, at CBD road, sorry. Now, the Bank Muscat was the first one to move out. They are very close to the airport, followed by NBO, followed by Oman Arab Bank, where they will be in next 10 years or 20 years. Maybe they will be at Barka or they will be at Nizwa. So what type of development is required, for those cities is something very important for us to really look into it. Innovating communities, I think you are well aware of this. I'll not go into much detail on this particular point. Health reimagined, completely different phenomena. We will be operated by sensors and smartphones, what we should be doing on a daily basis. Everything will be calculated and will be informed to us. So again, anybody in this sector need to really see how the health sector is going to perform going forward. The technology is going to take it over quite significantly. Food by design, maybe the food processing and the food production is going to be very different going forward. We don't need those large farmhouses to grow. it could be done in a very different manner. So how it is going to impact the food industry? Again, this is a very important trend going forward. Yeah. Food by design, molecular economy, which is basically making sure that your manufacturing is all perfect, which means maybe zero wastage of raw material, but this is how the future is going to work out. So when we talk about our future, when we talk about our vision, we need to look at where we stand right now, what are the forces, what are the global trends right now, and how is it going to drive our future going forward. I cannot do justice to this in 15 minutes, but I just wanted to make some of the points, and I hope you will have a very enjoyable summit today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Quatra. I'd now like to invite on stage Mr. Khalid Ansari, CEO of Anwar Holdings, an investment holding company established in 1994 and listed on the Muscat securities market. Previously, he was with KPMG for 38 years and retired as a partner in charge of the Oman office. He's been working in Oman for the last 32 years, providing professional services to government entities, public and private companies, and Mr. Ansari is a fellow member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants in England and Wales. His presentation is titled Key Challenges in Building a Diversified and Efficient Economy. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Khalid Ansari.
Your Highness, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum. First of all, the last two presentations were very informative, excellent. There's a lot of things to do for all of us in businesses and private sector and government to take it forward. I would focus on the challenges which Oman faces for the economy to make sure that the Oman economy is diversified and works efficiently. And I will only focus on 2 or 3 challenges, not many. And the objective is that hopefully in the next 12 months, we're able to fix those 3 challenges because they're not rocket science, they're very simple, and then move on to the bigger picture. So let me start off with what are our economic challenges. The first challenge I see today is the diversification from oil and gas. It's pretty clear. The other is our budgetary deficit. Our third is youth employment. I think these are the 3 major challenges I see for all business people and for government that we need to deal with these issues. So I won't go into diversification, the Vision 2040, etc. has all set out the diversification. These are the 5 sectors: agriculture and fisheries, logistics, manufacturing, mining, minerals, and tourism. Pretty clear. That's what diversification is. And I believe that each sector has huge potential. Okay. What are Oman's assets? For us to diversify and move away, we need a number of things. One is our assets, our infrastructure, and our legislation. Let's see where we are on that. If you look at the Oman asset pool, there are about 520,000 plus registered school students today in Oman. There are about 34,000 plus students enrolled in higher education. We have well-established institutions in the country for the last so many years. We've got Sultan Qaboos University, pretty well-established. His Highness would say, I think it's about 35 years been there, 34. Yeah. Then we've got Higher College of Technology, which deals with a lot of students coming out of technology, and there are many more private institutions. So in terms of our talent pool, we have all the infrastructure to produce. If you look at our infrastructure, where do we stand? We've got special economic zones operating in Sohar, Salalah, Dukum, all there up and running. We have industrial estates, very mature. In Rusail, we've got Salalah, we've got Sohar, Nizwa, and a few smaller ones. Mature, running for the last 40 years. We have perfectly located ports in Sohar, Dukum, Salalah, and Mina Qaboos. We have world-class international airports. Muscat International Airport, we're all proud about. Sheikh Ayman is there. A lot of credits for him. We've got Salalah, Sohar, and Dukum. World-class airports. We have first-class road networks in the country. And we have first-class good telecommunications. So in terms of infrastructure, we have everything. And what are the opportunities? We've got about 1 billion consumers on Oman's doorstep. We need to produce and make services not for us only. We need to look at around and not, if things can come from Japan here, why not things from Oman go to China and some other countries? So we have a huge potential. Geographically, we are located logistically in one of the best positions today. If you look around, connected by sea, air, very easy. So, with all the infrastructure, everything in place, diversification should happen now. Okay? The ingredients for diversification are available, as I have demonstrated. World-class infrastructure and human talent is there. We have the legislations in place. Oman is a pretty well-regulated, legislated country. We got rules and laws for everything. We got banking law, we got insurance law, we got capital market law. Some are being updated, like the commercial company law is under process for updation, foreign investment law is under process for updation, and PPP law is under updation. So everything is right. Now, I will give you 2 challenges and demonstrate it by way of practical example to see where are the bottlenecks and how can we fix. All of us, business people, government officials, policymakers, how can we fix that? Keep in mind that everything is ready. We don't need to do too much. Let's look at this institution. You all recognize that. It's been established for the last 34 years. There's another institution called the Research Council. So you've got Sultan Qaboos University, you've got a Research Council. And there's a lot of collaboration happens between the 2 of them. I had the privilege of visiting universities and sitting in some of these meetings. There's a lot of research being done there. A lot of papers are being produced, but they're all restricted and kept in these 2 institutions, by and large. I'm not saying all. Okay. So here is the huge potential of establishing university with a lot of qualified people, a lot of doctorates, doing research in engineering, in agriculture, environmental, College of Economics, marketing, etc. So lots being done. And there's a research council which funds this research. Just across the road, there is a Muscat Expressway which divides. There's an institute that is called COM, just across Muscat Expressway. And there is Rusail Industrial Estate. Now, I know there are companies in Rusail Industrial Estate which have been operating for the last maybe 35, 40 years. They've done well in the past, but time has now come for them to be more comparative, to recognize what the market is, to recognize the change in technology. For them, most of them, some of them has been my client before, they look out, they go outside, they bring in people and pay millions of dollars to do research. But I believe just across the road, they need to look just across the road. There are 2 institutions, get them to do the research, get them to do the work for you. We can save a lot of energy, time, etc. All we need is to connect the dots. I believe that most of the solutions are available within the country. All we need is to connect the dots. And that's very easily doable. That's all you do. You just start communicating with each other. A company has been producing, let's say, X, Y, and Z, can commission Sultan Qaboos University College of Engineering, so please come and look at our environmental problem, let's look at our productivity problem, look at our technology problem, and you get it done. Homegrown solution, and where we need to import ideas, we do. So that's one, unlocking the potential. The other one, I will give you an example of process efficiency. Okay? Because any development, any diversification can have a bottleneck and roadblocks because of the process. Now, I picked up a very, very simple example. There are hundreds of examples, but I'm going to pick up a very simple example and demonstrate how people can get frustrated, if the process is not efficient, we as an economy lose out. Okay. You all heard about FTA. There is, a company under the free trade agreement with America. Today, an American company owned by an American national can come into the country and establish a company, 100% owned. Okay, so I've picked up a case of one company which was formed, and tried to demonstrate the process. The process started 12th of January, and by 31st of January, the commercial registration was issued. The Oman Chamber of Commerce and Industry membership was issued, and the visa for the investor issued within 2 weeks. It's pretty good, using the portal of Ministry of Commerce and Industry, the investees, you can do that. And that was a client of mine, so he did it. Yeah. Then what happens? In March, he applied for a labor clearance. Okay. He's informed that his name is blocked. Okay. Because of whatever reason, okay. I won't go into the reasons of whether the name was good, bad, or whatever. But in March, then, he gets to know the name is blocked. So, you go and apply again, new name, new CR, new OCCI, issued in July. By the time summer has come in and all the rest of it, so it takes few months to sort it out. Yeah? Now the company is ready. The next step, the man applies to the Ministry of Manpower for a visa for a manager in August. That's declined. Okay? He applies as a coordinator, the same position, reapply as coordinator, declined. Yeah? Applies an accounts officer, declined. Then finally he applies as a technician. Okay? Then he's asked to provide a job contract, i.e. a contract with a customer, so they can justify, provide that. And on 19th of August, a labor clearance is given, and on 13th of September, the visa is issued on the 29th of October. So, it got done, but it's taken few months, okay? So you got a situation where somebody came in January, he was up and ready to put the money, and he gets a clearance in end of August. Now, 2000 happened, time has lapsed, but at the same time, this man is still working as a manager, but his labor card says technician. So he's on a wrong statistics, okay? So what is the problem here? The entities involved in the process, MOCI, OCCI, Royal Oman Police, Mass Criminality, and Manpower. They're all different entities. Each has got their own requirements. And what I understand from this gentleman, that each time he would approach, he has to take photocopies of everything and go to the another apartment. So in the end, the good news is the company is up and running, but it has taken 9 months to start a small company. And time is money, and that's what we forget. As a private sector, as a business people, as an investor, time is money. It may not matter to a bureaucrat or a government officer because he's not able to measure it. Yeah, because his job is one particular thing. So the whole infrastructure is there. It got done, but 9 months. And 9 months, all of you know, is pretty, 9 months is time. Yeah. If I'm selling my mobile, I can resell it tomorrow. But if I'm selling my time or my room, and today I don't sell it, tomorrow I'm not able to sell that. So that is the challenge, that we have a problem in process. And why does that happen? It happens because of these silos. There is a silo syndrome, I call it, where each unit is working perfectly well within its rules and regulation, but it doesn't solve the problem of the next department. I may be doing my job very well, but when I stop somebody or I raise an objection on a document, I'm not accountable for rejecting it. Okay? But the man who's on the other side of the counter, he is losing time. And I may be rejecting it for a reason, but the other department may not be able to understand that and would reject it. So silo syndrome. So to sum it up, I've got a solution for the key challenges. I'm going to leave that for the next panel discussions to see whether these solutions are applicable, workable, and if it is, how can we fix it? And we should set up ourselves a target for 1 year because these are very simple solutions. Yeah? You don't need to bring in millions of dollars of investment. It just needs some solution. The first one is the process needs to be re-engineered to make it efficient. Wherever we are dealing with any process, be it private sector, public sector, government, we need to re-engineer the process. And in that re-engineering, we need to emphasize to the process owner that time is money. So if I am sitting in a window and I'm blocking or delaying an application by 5 days, I should recognize that 5 days means X number of real lost. Also, we've talked about in the earlier sessions about technology and other things. We need to maximize the use of technology. Today, with digitization, we don't need to take photocopies of stacks and stacks of paper for each ministries or each department. One digitized document in a central and you just draw on it. So digitization and process, ensuring that time is money is important. Obviously, this is remove the silos, create a collaborative environment. Every department, if they collaborate with each other, there is no issue. Things will get done. As we saw, things did get done, but it took 9 months. So the challenge with the private sector is that time, and time is money. And the last one is connect all the dots. And most of the solutions, I believe, are available within the country. If all of us, with our experience, put our head together and look for a solution, we'll find it. 99.5% will find it. 0.5, we go outside and pay money. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ansari, for the key insights. It's time to start the first panel discussion of OER's Business Summit. Now, this panel discussion is titled Economy and Development, Building a Diversified, Dynamic, Globally Interactive and Competitive Economy. Members of the audience are, of course, free to raise questions during the course of the summit. We'll be grateful if you first introduce yourself and the organization you represent before you ask the question. Now, while everyone is free to raise questions, I just want to emphasize that they should not be insulting, in insulting nature, and either towards a person, a company, or an institution. The final decision whether a question merits a reply will rest with our moderator. Now, speaking of our moderator, I'm delighted once again to be able to share the stage with a personality that is very well known in both the international media and the Arab media. Ms. Naima Abu Warda will be our moderator for the panel today. She's a columnist and an award-winning bilingual English broadcast journalist, regarded as an opinion leader. She's approached by think tanks, the corporate world, and government entities for her insights. Now, she regularly chairs and is a speaker at regional and global gatherings, notably the World Economic Forum, the Arab Business Council, and various UN meetings. She presented BBC's Middle East Business Report for its lifetime and was part of the team that actually set it up. She's a non-executive director on the University of Surrey's Board of Trustees, and she has written opinion pieces for Forbes Arabia, has taught media courses at Zayed University in the UAE as a visiting lecturer. She's also a former member of the Arab Thought Foundation Advisory Committee, as well as a board member of the World Congress for History Producers. And today, she's come to Muscat once again to moderate OER's Business Summit 2018. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Ms. Naima Abu Warda on stage.
Assalamu alaikum. And good morning, ladies and gentlemen. How are we today? Good. It's actually really interesting being here because, as we heard this morning, this is about nation building. This is a Oman initiative. It's not about business, politics, people in isolation. It's about all of it together. So let us agree on two things. That is one, that this is a big thing, but also that we're often too clever for our own good. Would you agree with that? And what I mean is that we perhaps overanalyze the numbers and paralyze ourselves into inaction. And I think that's the big message that I had that I took away with me when I was involved, in fact, last December with can you hear me? With the workshops that were focusing on Oman 2040. The big message there was that you're all in this together, and what sort of nation do you want for yourself? It's everything from how you're going to live in a big metropolis versus smaller, more culturally appropriate for many people units. You know, what is it? How do you want to live? What sort of jobs do you want to have? And that sort of thing. The problem, of course, is that we say we want to be involved, but sometimes we don't do anything about it. I caution you against that. Look at what happens when you don't engage or vote. The UK has Brexit to contend with, and the US is turning away from globalization and embracing protectionism as a result of certain people not engaging, right? So this is a huge, huge opportunity. And I say this because I beseech you, let's have a dialogue. Put your hand up, ask a question, get involved. Today we're focusing on 3 areas: people, economy, institutional performance. What Khalid said, I totally subscribe to. He simplified the number soup and boiled it down to what can be done about real things that you deal with every single day. Before I introduce my fellow panelists, please allow me to indulge in the following. A couple of years ago, I wrote a very more highbrow poem that spoke about ratings, GDP, and various other figures. This year, I just wrote a few lines that actually are about taking a big step away from the number soup and thinking about the point. What is the point of all this? Allow me the following. Oman, oh Oman, just what will you be come the year 2040? There's the people, economy, a huge world out there. Where, what, how do you start? Wait, do not despair. The answer is simple, but no, not easy. Do right by all 3. You'll be fine. You'll see. That's the people, economy, and the world. Behavior and mindset is at the core and the fore. Sorry to be such a big bore. Inclusive is key. You're all on this journey. So speak up loud and proud. There's a lot at stake. How can you forgive yourself or speak up if there's a mistake? No matter your path, the future will happen. To make it your best, let's get a crackin'. And now, let me welcome to the stage. You can clap, it's okay. I mean, the point is, this is serious stuff, and I'm trying to take a step away from getting sucked into detail that goes against the bigger purpose. And really, from my perspective, the big purpose is about changing mindset and behavior, joining the dots, removing the silos, all the stuff that we heard about, because the solutions are here. But it's about making it happen and not talking the talk anymore. Enough talking, let's get action happening. Representing the Asia-Pacific region at Airports Council International and the Global Trade Representative of the world's airport authorities, please welcome to the stage the CEO of Oman Airports, Ayman Al-Husni. Our next participant is on the board of companies and investment funds such as Zain Group, Oman Corporate Governance and Sustainability Centre, and Al-Amal Fund. Please welcome the Chief Executive Officer of Omantel, Talal Said Al-Mamari. Helping shape Oman Oil Company's strategic direction, the Acting Executive Managing Director of Takamul Investment Company, which is owned by Oman Oil Company and manages its Oman-based investments. Please welcome Najla Al-Jamali. Chief Executive of Port of Duqm. Please welcome Regi Vermeulen. and Chief Financial Officer of Octal. The purpose of business is to create a better world, is emblazoned on the company's website. Please welcome to the stage Scott Ewan. And the tourism sector, what's going to happen and what is happening. Please welcome to the stage the CEO of Omran, Peter Walishnowski. Thank you very much for joining us. By the way, yes, please, if you have questions, comments, I mean, let's keep it to brief and to the point comments that feed into the conversation. Please raise your hand, and there are microphones roaming the floor, so we can do this throughout. If you have one, don't ask to be asked, put your hand up. Welcome. I'd like not to get bogged down with the stuff that is obvious. Spend less than you earn sort of stuff, so raise taxes, that is a given in terms of how the economy needs to look at the number soup and so on, yeah? But let's look at that big picture of where you're headed and how you want to achieve what you're setting out to do. There is one key thing because of the title of this panel. The title is along the issue of diversification and how you're going to create the Oman of the future. So in light of what has recently happened, my first question to you is, the Israeli visit to the country, is that the direction you're headed in? Is that the diversification that we're seeing reaching out to parts or places that you haven't had close ties with before? It's part of the this is it, it's a safe environment here.
I think we had an agreement and you just pulled off.
Broke it.
Well, Excellency Sheikh Salim, Excellency Sheikh Abdullah, ladies and gentlemen, it looks like I need to pay for the price being in the first seat sitting here. But nevertheless, I'll just briefly talk about the new infrastructure of the airports and how the government have really invested heavily in the airports.
We will get onto that, I promise. But you know what, it's not fair, is it? It's not fair. I would actually like to throw this open to the floor. Dr. Adham. Is he? He's gone, okay.
Okay, I tried to sneak out,
yes.
But I'll answer you, okay. Actually, if you see, we live in the Middle East, and the country you mentioned is part of the Middle East. I think it's evident that we need to make sure that we make peace. Oman is known with His Majesty Sultan Qaboos and his vision to make peace in the whole world. And I think Oman is being called like the Switzerland of Europe. We always try to drive the economy with our stability, with our strength on being very moderate and as a safe country with all neighboring countries. And I think that was the trigger with having the visit of Israel, and we're actually looking forward to have peace for Palestinians. That's the main aim of His Majesty vision and the government vision.
Right. I mean, the point is, it's about talking about what's really happening on the ground here. That's part of it. It is a case of who do you link up with, how do you do it, and why. Moving on from this point and onto the airports now. It was actually a pleasant experience, I must say, arriving at, it was great. Allow me this, though. You've got fantastic infrastructure. You've got state-of-the-art hardware. It is often, not just with the airport, but actually across the region, I find this everywhere, it's the software of people's mindsets and behavior. That's the key thing. I'll give you two examples, and it's not to harp on about this, but it is important. Getting my visa was an issue. There was no change, and I didn't have my credit card with me. I had to wait, I think, about 15 minutes. So it's the idea of joining up the dots. If this is the visa station, you need to have that sort of facility there. And then I was the only person at that point to walk through passport control, and it was 7-1. There were 7 people at passport control and 1 of me, and I still had to wait because they were busy doing other stuff. So my question to you is, how do you approach this? It must be very challenging, not just for you, but for every business here. The hardware versus the people.
Well, as His Highness mentioned in his presentation, that every entity has to have its own vision, and that vision should actually be the focus of everybody working under that roof. As you know, in airports, we have different stakeholders, and whether it is the Royal Oman Police, or the airport operator, or the ground handler, or many other stakeholders in the airport. We had actually a vision which we made in 2015, is to be among the top 20 airports worldwide in customer service. So we conducted lots of seminars and workshops to enable and make sure that everybody does sing the same song. We were in 2015 number 96 today, and I'm disclosing this for the first time. Last week we were number 20 worldwide. Back to your point, for the visa, you can apply online, and you should avoid the line.
Queues, yes.
But just to correct, I think we accept cash, and if again, customer is always right. So we always want to make sure that customer have a smile on his journey in the airports.
It's not so much about my personal experience, though. It's about the issue of joining up the dots, which are, I find that, it is often the case that huge investments go into big spend, infrastructure, machines. What is your approach, really, this is my question, to making sure that the people who work within your area of responsibility have the right skills and mindset? That's the thing. And it feeds, of course, into the second panel today.
Actually, there is certain KPIs for each head of airport. Oman airports run 4 airports in Oman. It's Muscat, Salalah, Duqm, and Suhar. And all of those head of airports have KPIs. Those KPIs is to sit with the stakeholders once a week. And he should tick that box. With ticking that box means that they need to sit with the security and look at what is the bottleneck. Why does the passenger stays for 1 minute or 1.5 minutes in the queues? And also, what is the way of actually making him happy and making him have a seamless journey during his stay in the airport, whether he's arriving or departing. You know that airports is like the first and last impression for people visiting Oman, and also it's the last and first impression for people living in Oman. So we engage a lot with the stakeholders. We the ASQ rating that I just announced, the 20 in the world, and Muscat, and the 6 in the world for Salalah. If you look at the ACI questionnaire, it actually asks the passengers whether he's convenient in his path, in the check-in counters, in the immigration, and in the the cleanness of the toilets, the the Wi-Fi connectivity, everything. We are actually rated, and we intentionally made it this way to actually link with international body to rate us and to make sure that our passengers are actually having seamless journey. We engage a lot with the human. We know that technology and huge buildings doesn't make it, but actually the human touch makes it. We were just talking on the table just a while ago about technology and about robots, whether we put robots in the immigration or in the check-in counters. But at the end of the day, I think it's the human factor that makes the change. And we invest heavily in training our staff.
Okay. So, Scott, what are you doing within the organization? I mean, again, a reminder, the purpose of business is to create a better world, is what's on your website, your company website. What are you doing to create a better workplace? So, again, going back to the issue of Are you wasting resources because you're in silos? Are you finding the right skills within the workforce here, and so on?
Our industry is always a global industry. We're a lead player in rigid packaging business. For us, it links back to the point that's made before. What's very important for us is the quality of the product. We have a big infrastructure. We have a large plant. The plant only operates based on the quality of the people that we've got inside the plant. The HSE parameters, the safety of our staff, that all comes back to the individuals that we've got and their commitment both to themselves and to the company. So for us, it's very much about driving that sort of mentality right through our workforce, that they are the oil that allows everything to work. And yes, we have had issues with silo mentality. We're trying to break that down. We have a very global workforce, so trying to keep that workforce motivated and working with one another so that the nationalities don't become a silo is one of the challenges that we face as well. So we have a lot of challenges. We think we're meeting them. The company is performing particularly well, and that's really on the back of the teams of people that we have within the organisation.
So I want to ask a simple question to each of you in turn, please, which is the following. We have the government, the private sector. I'd like to just get down to the issue of what do you want from the government? And what is your pledge to the people and the government? So let's start off with what is it that you, in your various sectors and industries, want from the government? Starting with tourism.
Well, our company is a government company,
Yeah.
so we are government.
Yes.
We work with the private sector. We have a number of very large PPPs going on in the tourism sector, which has been very fruitful to date in terms of bringing foreign capital, intellectual capital, and best practice into the market. So the government is very open towards working with others, both inside the country and outside of the country, and putting the money into the infrastructure of tourism that's needed to begin the sector. And so as Omran, we basically execute the tourism infrastructure inside the country using government funds. And once that infrastructure is there, then we bring in investors to participate in it.
So, for example, are the processes within the system operating smoothly? In other words, yes, you are government, but you still have to deal with various government entities.
We have a very strong board made up of 5 government ministers. So most of the decision makers related to the tourism sector, the financing, the land issues, etc., are represented on our board. So we don't have any problem in getting things done, and things move quite quickly.
That's fantastic. What about you?
Well, we're a private company, so my first priority is actually to my shareholders. That's really where we're focused on first and foremost. I think in the question of what's a man done from a government point of view, probably already has done what was required. The rule of law that's required, the business environment, the free zones, all of these were critical to the setup of Octal. Those are all still in place and still operating. Can we find improvements so that the business environment is consistent? Because that's really what's important for us. This is a look ahead for 20 years. We're putting in plants with 20-year lifespans. So for us, we want to see consistency from the government in terms of the policy so that we can map our path within the
Would something like, for example, VAT being implemented be part of this sort of consistency?
Governments have to take their own requirements to balance their own books. I mean, VAT is very common in most parts of the world. Taxation is very important.
I meant in terms of when it's going to happen.
I think there's never a good time for a business to accept VAT is going to come in and have to deal with another taxation. But so long as you're given plenty of time to plan for it, that that you can see what the process is and we can really position and be ready for it, then the impact can be mitigated both from a company point of view and a club.
The reason I bring this up is because the date changed. And so my question really is, these sorts of things, do they affect you in any way at all, date changes?
Because we're already a player within the Middle East, we've already done our VAT implementations in KSA. We're aware of our VAT requirements in the UAE. So for us, the timing will be whatever fits best for the government. We are in a position that we're ready to deal with those challenges when they come on board, and we don't see this being too major effect, given that we've already experienced some of the inputs elsewhere. What we would like to be consistency across the VAT, across the region, so that we really have one more joined up VAT regime rather than 3 very different VAT regimes.
Reggie, you have a fan in Washington. It's the Middle East Institute, which is based in Washington, has come out with a very favourable report just recently and it refers to you being at the forefront of Oman's efforts to transition into a post-oil economy, and so on and so forth. So where are your bottlenecks, again, with regard to government issues?
I think that what we have to continue, there's a significant effort that have been started in, I would say, the client focus, and it might sound a bit rare when we're talking about a government entity, but at the end, this is what it is have a government that is client focus and that's made everything possible to attract and to enhance the actual business and to bring new business. It is something that have started, and I think that under the I would call the excuse of the setup of special economic zone, this mindset is starting to be put in place. We see it in customs, we see it in some speed of doing businesses, but we still have to continue, we still have to increase that, and we still have to bring it to another level. So
what is the biggest challenge there?
The biggest challenge is actually, I was having a discussion recently. The interesting thing that is happening now is that, and it was also highlighted by the previous speaker, I think the head is there. When you talk of the top of the institutions, being ministers, DGs, etc., everybody's customer focused, we're going to the right direction, and we have all agreement. The problem is that when you have to cascade to the guy at the gate, to the guy at the counter at the airport, to this final last step, that's where now the hurdle is still. And we mentioned before, he's at the counter, he don't care if it's 5 days or 2 days, but actually the client cares. And that's where an effort still have to be done and put in place in order to bring it to that level of detail.
It sounds so simple, but actually this is a huge issue. And it's across, not just, like I said, in this country, it's across the region and elsewhere. It sounds so unimportant in some way, because you've got all the big stuff sorted out. But how do you make it happen?
That's the entire challenge, is the
Isation, it's a new word, yeah.
of the entire setup is increasing the discussion, is bringing actually, is making sure that we build up other ways of contact and other ways of passing the information. I'll take, for example, the port. We engage as much at the high level of the government that at the lower level of the government. And I have teams that are engaging at the lower level to make sure that actually the decision have been made, and or they have been passed, and if the decision have not been passed, actually to inform them and say, listen, go and check upstairs because it has been made. You maybe didn't have the note, but having it, here's a copy of the note. So there's a lot of effort that is still being done. It's what I call that business facilitation, and I have a team that is focusing on that. But it is essential for the moment, and I think that we need to accelerate that, we need to put that more in place. There's a lot of goodwill in the country, there's a lot of wish to do so, and we see the difference. I think 5 years ago, 3 years ago was another time, but we still have to move on, especially because some of our neighbors, in my case, a neighbor like Jebel Ali, is an extremely aggressive and extremely efficient neighbor that obviously I get compared and the other port get compared to every day. So as much we get better, they also are getting better and better. So it's an interesting dynamic, but things are going in the right direction.
So a question to the floor, how many of you believe that your business is being held back, not because you don't have the big picture sorted out, but because of this daily grind stuff, the very last point or the first point of contact with people? Put your hand up if it's yes. You are very much challenged by that. Really? Are you sure? What businesses are you in? I'd like to find out, but that's another question for later. But if any questions are out there, please put your hand up to ask the participants. Yes, please.
There's a thing called stakeholder mapping, where there's a whole exercise which I believe we missed out in one of our exercises between the private and the public partnership when we had done the Tanfeedh program for the government. And I think the stakeholder mapping will help us identify, analyze, map, and then prioritize who our stakeholders are. And I think we missed that opportunity there. So there is an opportunity. For instance, you have the telecom is sitting next to the airport and so forth. So those dialogues, you need to have an expert in stakeholder mapping to engage in these kind of dialogues. And I think that's what's missing here, in my opinion.
So here's a bit of a perhaps un-PC thought, which is it about that? Is it about dialogue and experts coming in, or is it about going to the workshop floor, as it were, and providing incentive for people to behave differently? You know, which is it? Where are you? What is your opinion on this, Najla?
You asked two things. One about what do we want from the government? What do we want? What is our pledge to the people? I think I concur that where the issue lies is not necessarily at the top, but at the bottom. But I think more importantly, the issue is when you have to deal with multiple entities, like Mr. Ansari said, and it's that coordination, and you end up running in circles between different entities within the government. And if I'm facing that difficulty and I'm a government-owned company, then be sure that our partners are also facing that company. And it's not a lack of goodwill, but it's more a lack of education and getting those person on that counter to understand that he is part of a puzzle, that when he stops or when he delays, there's a domino effect to that. And then to answer your second question, I think what we're doing at Takamul and at Oman Oil is looking at, I'd say, the issue where what can we do to diversify our income from a single commodity, oil? Where are we gonna create opportunities to export other products? And for me, one of the things we've been working on is the metal sector. We're exporting more and more aluminum, more and more iron pellets. One of our companies, Oman Aluminium Rolling Company, almost 90% goes to the States despite the tariffs. And we see huge opportunities there. And I'd like to see, I've challenged my team to say, this is where we need to go. We need to look at what else can we manufacture away from the petrochemicals and the chemicals. Maybe around fertilizer, which is still arguably close to it, but around metals, where else can we go? We have a mining development Oman in our portfolio. What can we mine that can also help us diversify that further?
So part of the discussion that was being had last December with the 2040 workshops was, what is it that this country is going to do to enable it to earn in the future? Is it a case of more of the same, so tourism, the current manufacturing base that exists, and just enhancing that? Or is it a case of taking a step away and saying, actually, we want to create, I don't know, a niche within a niche? Yesterday I read about a company, a manufacturing-based company, that is inventing and making lubrication kit for the agriculture sector. So it's a niche within a niche. What I'm saying is it a case for the nation that it is more of the same, but just increase efficiency, productivity, and so on? Or
I think it's a bit of both, because for me, as a government-owned company, what I try to do is take the greenfield risk of investment, and that creates an ecosystem in itself for other private industry to come in and do all the little bits at the bottom to serve me, and that sparks kind of its own ecosystem. Whether you're talking about, okay, well, if we're going to go into renewable energy and go into solar, then that sparks, is there solar desal? Is there more of that? So if I'm going to make the bigger investment as a company owned by the government, I can then help create that innovation, through which we have also vehicles to help private sector with that.
So before I come on to you, allow me please. Khalid, where are you? Oh, there you are. You recently retired, but you haven't really retired, because you're part of a company now that actually looks at...
I finished one phase, I'm in the second innings. Yeah.
And in fact, what you're doing is you're dealing with companies that are, the greenfield and piggybacking on what exists and filling gaps and so on. My question to you is this: what is it? Okay, so what Khalid does now is he puts his knowledge into the practical side of rolling your sleeves up and turning companies around, right? What is it that is needed out there on the ground? What do these companies need? Why do they come to you for help?
I think our company is there to make money for the shareholders. As simple as that. Yeah. We exist to increase shareholders' value. And for us, every minute is money. So if we are promoting a project and the timeline is 1 year and we end up in 2 years, it's a loss to everyone. So the biggest challenge is to complete projects on time and encourage all the stakeholders who are regulators.
You've got two things.
Sure on time.
You've got two things happening in parallel, though. Yeah. One is the issue that we're talking about here, which is the big getting the engine of the government to change certain things about delivering. Correct. Fine. But alongside that and in tandem, you've got to keep going, right? You've got to keep companies in business and performing and so on. So really my question as well is, these companies that you are now investing in, what is it that they have that's holding them back?
What holds the company back?
They're all Omani companies, by the way. That's the point. These are homegrown Omani companies.
Yeah, we invest in only Omani companies. And what holds back is the processes which are outside our control, i.e. with the ministry, with the regulators, and the similar entities. It's again back to silo. So if I need a permission to start an operation, I have to go to 5 different entities. And those entities may take its own sweet time. And, that's where the delay comes in.
So your big emphasis is
delays in implementing certain timelines, which is a challenge.
Well, I know that a couple of the things that you're involved with are enabling owner-managers to actually sidestep and allow other people to come in and manage because they've grown beyond a certain point. It's a typical sort of situation for an entrepreneur who manages their own company, but also how to leverage things like technology, IT, to do away with wasted opportunity, time, and so on. So where are you at with...
Could I just give you an example of 2 government entities? You must have all come across the Muscat Opera, beautiful opera house. Now, it's been open for a number of years. I've never seen the program starting a single second delay. Every day with the performance, 7 o'clock, starts at 7. So if that can happen there, which is a government-owned entity, why can't it happen in another ministry where I have an application and the time is 2 days and it takes 2 months? Both are government entities. So there is some fundamental difference in the 2 entities which is making it change.
So how are you, A, dealing with this sort of stuff, but B, able to make that pledge that you will provide the latest, you will really enable people in this country to utilize what's out there, what can be done? And I say this, of course, because sometimes things that are available elsewhere aren't always available locally.
Well, technology is definitely is a solution for many problems in today's society. I mean, it has already changed the way we consume so many things personally, as well as enterprises have gone through, some form of transformation, and therefore technology is definitely contributing in improving efficiencies. So if we take technology as a solution, I can sell a lot of solutions today as a telecom provider, but I don't think that's the core issue. I think the problem that we need to solve for, and if we are talking about Oman and we're talking about the future, I think the future first starts today. And many of the people here, and I think Khalid was very good in summarizing the problem, and the problem is these silos. Now, and in one form or another, you take, say, a strategy. We have a strategy for a specific sector, and the strategy is built sometimes without taking into consideration the realities on the ground. It is built because we want to be we benchmark ourselves with a certain developed country, but we fail to see that these developing countries have reached these stages after a journey of many successes and many failures. So it's a journey. It is very important that we align our strategies with our objectives, with the realities on the ground.
So
There are
how would you
balances and compromises.
How would you define that then? If you were to look at your country as a whole, take a step back, what would you say is that thing? In other words, you're talking about let's be realistic and let's look at the reality on the ground. Where are you at? How would you describe where you're at?
Well, I think, first of all, we are in a good stage because there is dialogue. Now, the only problem, and I will borrow from what Sanjay said earlier, I would say in telecom today, there is a lot of discussion about, say, 5G technology. And I get a lot of people who talk to me about, the people already, or the world is already in the 5G. Where are you guys? You should be in 6G, for example. But then the reality is that neither 5G is a reality or 6G is a reality as well. So we are starting this the dialogue. That's a good step. But because of the fast pace, the mindset today is that people get frustrated very quickly. So it is very important that we have a sense of urgency. And I think we have great minds and we have great assets, and the biggest assets is the talent that is existing in the country and the high level of loyalty and commitment from not only the citizens, honestly, from people who live in Oman. Khalid has been here long enough and he came very openly, talked about things in a very simplified way. So we have many ingredients for and factors for success. We just need to basically make sure that we have that sense of urgency, and we need to understand that the business models are changing, not only for private enterprises, but also for government. So what is the really the real business model that we need? What is practical today? I mean, everybody have, like you said, very good intentions, but when it comes to the reality on the ground, we work on silos, we get frustrated at night when, if you are into shisha or something like that, you start talking about this.
You come up with all the solutions, right? Yeah, when you're having a shisha. And that's exactly my next question to the floor. You know what? Give me a practical, pragmatic solution to a couple of things. Something that you're facing in your business life. The intentions are great. The minds are brilliant. It is about the application, the daily grind. Anyone? You've not come up with a solution or a suggestion of something changing? Yes, please. Can we have a microphone to? Yes.
My name is Maqbool Ali Salman from Al Hassan Electricals. Well, I think I have some simple thoughts about the whole issue. It's an excellent vision, 2040, quite long term, and then to continuity of the spirit is very important all the way long. And one great thing has been done now that the private sector is being involved now into the achievement of this vision, because we have to go together with the government entities. Now here, I feel that still the connection with the private sector is not enough. I'm talking about general business environment. So I have got a couple of thoughts on this. One is that if there is any monthly communique is created, either through social media or through anywhere, that all the business leaders are informed about what developments are taking place month by month on this 2040 vision. And then obviously it's a long-term vision. There will be a lot of milestones and sub-milestones. And of course, we would rather like to have some measurable milestones with the deadlines, and also to be informed, and also private sector to be expected, how do we contribute very specifically? I don't want to talk anything in general. Very specific, me as a businessman, how do I participate in the Vision 2040 and all the business leaders so that it becomes, ownership for everybody, government as well as the private sector? Thanks.
So it's about sharing information and being involved. I mean, for example, when it comes to the, yes, okay.
You wanted some example. Let me share with the audience one thing that we do. For example, there's no secret that one of the big challenges that a lot of company has is the principle of hire and fire. It's nearly impossible in Oman. So what we put
That's not true.
Somehow.
I'm sorry. I am going to argue this. I'm going to interrupt you and say the crisis that we went through with the drop in oil price meant we had to do things differently. And in my portfolio at Takamul, we had many, many ailing companies, and I was brought in specifically to do turnaround. And while people might say, no, when there is a will, there is a way, and everybody will rally up with you to help you through this. We had to downsize 100 Omanis out of one of our companies, and we managed to do it successfully, and we turned that business around from pumping $120 million every year into it to almost pumping nothing this year into it. It is possible. It is possible. You just need to have the perseverance and talking to the right people and just believing in that mindset. So I don't think when people say Omanization is a handicap, yes, it can be, but you need to put in the right things in place to say, no, there is a way to hire and fire. There is a mechanism. There's also a mechanism to talk within the business communities to move people around. These people are not without skill. If your business is going through a downturn, if you're not happy with an individual, you can still have a very healthy dialogue with the Ministry of Manpower, with different entities. It is very difficult, it's very challenging. I've sat in many screaming matches, but it is doable.
But surely one question is, a company going under versus somebody who is not fit for purpose within a company that's not going to go bust. So
I still went down from about 40-something people in my entity down to 32.
And then my next question is, did you reabsorb them? So were they given new roles or jobs within the bigger picture of your
Not
company?
always. Right. Not always.
But I'm assuming that your situation is slightly different to this.
Maybe just, I never said it's not possible. I am sometimes very practical when I have to, and I'm doing it. Now, Omanization, I never said Omanization is a problem. I'm 87% Omanized.
In general, people tend to use that as a...
But in all means, it's not our case.
Can I just put this to the floor? How many entities here have a problem with saying goodbye to people, Omani nationals, who aren't fit for what you need from them at that time? I know it's not yes, so being honest, So these people have had, and the problem again, we're talking about time is money. If it takes such a long time and so many meetings and screaming matches, it's an issue in itself, even if it's achievable.
It is an issue, but I'm saying it's not impossible. And yes, you end up with a label. I'm told apparently I fire people all the time, but it's needed sometimes.
To your point, Ricky.
So just to... So why we came to that point? We are highly Omanized. We had some cases that went to court, and we have been, I've never seen that, we have been forced to retake people that were non-performant by the court, which is very wrong for investor. Anyway, that put aside because I wanted to come with positive things, not negative things. What I was saying is that if you are imaginative, if you are constructive the other way around, and one of the things that we've did, we are based in Duqm. Duqm is a young area. There is unfortunately at the time being not a lot of university graduated in Duqm, so we have to take people on more basic jobs. And what we have done to put in place the concept of fire and hire is actually when we sign a contract with a young of Duqm, actually it's a three-party contract. We sign with him, his father, and the wali. And the interesting thing is that when he's starting not to be performing, we inform the father and the wali. It's also the responsibility of the father to get his son out of bed and be on work, etc. Well, the interesting thing is that now we have a turnover, and after it's been a year and a half we have that in place, all the the wrong attitude are gone, and I'm very proud to have a lot of Omani from Dukum on the job with the right mindset, on time, leaving on time, working and performing. It took time, it took imagination, and a setup that is a bit heavy. You said three-party, you said, my God, it is heavy, but at least now we've set a mindset, and the interesting thing that now people from the Al-Wusta region applying to Port of Dukum are actually the non-lazy one, because they know that I'll get them out, not me, their father and the wali will, which is an interesting thing. So what I'm saying is that if you are imaginative, there are ways to move things to the right direction and put this work ethic into place.
So perhaps it's the marriage of cerebral and cultural considerations and how to make it happen, because it's about figuring out the key to changing behavior and attitude. Really, that's at the core of all this. Any other questions from the floor? We had a hand up from this side. Yes, please.
Jamila Zijali from Al Yusra Islamic Bank. I think one of the area which we need to focus, a lot of new joiner, incomer, they're kept at the front counter, and many times they don't have that kind of skills how to deal with customers. In many government entities as well, that's the issue. And in many places we hear when you call a call center that this call is recorded for quality purpose and so on. I think many times those calls are not, or customer voice is not heard out well to find out what is the problem. And this is one of the issues I think government entities, Mr. Khalid was mentioning, that if a staff at the counter, let's say, delayed an application, kept it or rejected it, there is no one who basically questioned them why. And if the staff member knows that someone going to question them, it will make a big impact, big change.
One of my questions that I wrote down to myself was, is it worthwhile for this country to continue spending from your savings? Was it $4 billion down this last year from in terms of what's held at the central bank? Is it worth continuing to do that and putting money actively into, again, changing the behavior, figuring out the key to sorting things out on that ground level? Really good point there, by the way, because of course people think, oh, I'm going to become a manager, right? But damage has been done by then. I mean, in terms of delays and so on, you are promoted to management. Perhaps you need to be promoted to being people-facing. I don't know the solution, but that's the thing. It's about figuring out what works for this country. And it's a real thing. Is it worth you as a nation saying, actually, wait a minute, we are going to earmark X amount of money for behavioral change, or call it what you want, the business of behavior. Is that the way forward? I don't know. You need to tell.
Can I use an example? We have the opposite problem in the tourism sector. We can't get enough Omanis. If you take hotels as an example, we can only get about 40% Omanization rate, even though we want much higher. There's a historic stigma attached to service industry. Oman Air, when they advertise for cabin crew, they're inundated with Omanis. They seem to be happy to serve in the air, but when it's on the ground in a five-star hotel, they're not so willing. So there is very much a cultural issue here. One of the big objectives of the 2040 tourism strategy is to increase the workforce in tourism from 140,000 today to 500,000. How are we going to do it? When we're opening up hotels every year, we can't fill them with Omani staff. We have an Omani tourism college that is there to teach both vocational and degree courses in tourism, but as soon as they get the piece of paper, they just want to go and work for a government entity. They don't want to go into the service sector. So this is a very big issue the country needs to face if it's going to hit those employment targets in the tourism sector, and all the money that's being spent on the tourism sector to create the infrastructure, to create those jobs. It's a missed opportunity unless we can change perceptions.
I mean, with huge unemployment, is it 49% of the youth? 40% of the country is under 25. So that's your workforce, isn't it?
And if you globally, over the next 10 years, tourism globally will employ 11% of the world's working population. Right? We're not going to get anywhere near that in tourism here.
So really the question is, what are you doing to fix this? Because, is it a case of... So years ago, I was invited to a... what's it called? When you go to a jobs fair, that's it, jobs fair in the UAE. And the companies were out there touting for the next generation and that sort of thing. And one entity said, put out a questionnaire to the graduates, what will help you? What will help you on your way to getting a job with people like us? And one of the suggestions was create a jobs fair for my parents, not for them to get a job, but for them to actually see what it's really like to work in these places, so that the parents don't stop their daughters, in this case, from applying for jobs, because they understand what really happens, you see. So is that a solution for you, that you go in and talk to the wali, for example, you know, and the fathers?
It's part of the solution, and we do that through the Oman Tourism College. For example, last week we had a Women in Tourism event during Women's Day. It is, and there's a difference between men and women here as well. You know, women are less inclined to go into the sort of service sector than men are.
But I mean, as a strategy then, taking yourself away from the issue at hand and looking at what will cause a change or bring about a change, is it a case of, right, let's look at the cultural makeup of this and spend time, effort, money on bringing in the whole family, as it were?
Certainly, and that's exactly right. And we do have open days where the parents are encouraged to come in, encouraged to go to the place of work, etc. But it's a long-term issue, and it can't be sort of solved easily, but it has to be solved in order to improve the employment rate in this country and to boost the urbanisation rate in tourism. Otherwise, the government's spending a lot of money on infrastructure for tourism that's going to still require people from overseas, expats, to come and work.
Okay. I think that's actually a very good suggestion, and that's probably, I think we were asked what we want to send to government. I think that's a good suggestion, whereas for a lot of young people, it's their parents that are the enablers for you to go in or out of something. I remember at 23 coming to tell my mother, by the way, I'm going to go work in the North Sea on a rig, and I'm chopping off my hair, I'm going to be almost bald. And she had a fit. And I think if it wasn't for my father who said, yes, I'm going to have an offshore tiger, that it wouldn't have happened.
Can I add something here? Again, it's me. I think in the tourism industry, I'll tell you one thing, my personal experience. I worked for Boeing, the aerospace company in Dubai for 6 years, and then I decided to come back and live in Oman. And one of the issues I had is lack of mentorship, role models. You know, to look at CEOs and to aspire to be like that person. And until today, I find it a challenge, to be honest. So one of the things you can do is, in the tourism industry, I would advise is, through the Ministry of Tourism, raise awareness. I'm sure there are Omani role models in senior positions in tourism to encourage these young people to enter the workforce. Because I'll tell you one thing, I noticed something about Omanis, and in particular young Omanis. You just have to give them a little bit of confidence. That's all it takes, is confidence. And with that, as you said, it was through the father, through you and Duqm. You just need to give them the tools, and I think we lack that in the workforce. That's my personal experience from what I've seen since I've come back. Build confidence, create role models, you need to have mentors, you know, and we'll get there eventually.
I'm not disagreeing, but this happens everywhere. And it's about moving forward from this point of more of the same and looking at what is effective. So if it is more effective to say door to door, bring in the family, then that's the way to go. You know, that's the point. It's about not, status quo isn't working. So what is it that we need to do to make a change? Very briefly.
Yeah, very briefly, what I wanted to say, it's you were mentioning mentorship from very senior position, but what I think very important also is that actually to valorize and say that being a good carpenter, being a good dock worker, being a good tallyman, it is very honorable, very important and essential. We are not all CEOs and we won't be all CEOs, and the base jobs are crucial, and is very, you can be proud of being a dock worker. And that's something that also I want people to understand. I'm putting a lot of effort and energy in my younger mind to say, be proud to be a very skilled carpenter or welder, or we need, and that's where the employment is. We won't create 1,000 managers, 1,000 CEOs. That won't happen. But we'll create 10,000 welders, 10,000 workers, and I think that's something that vocational college, the base, is the future in my eyes.
I mean, huge global organizations like the World Bank and the IMF, and they look at local job creation and what works. Countries, let's say North Africa, just to get away from here, that they have a huge percentage of university graduates, but they don't have jobs because they're all being university graduates. And these huge global organizations are saying, stop sending your young to university, send them to vocational school, because that's where the need is, that's how they will actually earn money. But it's also about the mindset of, I'm good at this is my niche in life, and I'm going to be happy and proud of doing it. Please, very briefly though.
Yeah. On this Omanization issue, it's sensitive, and I think it has been discussed, and it's good it's openly discussed. I agree with Aisha. Environment is very important, creating the right environment, and we saw that within our own organization, within our mantle, create the right environment. There are sufficient incentives. The people are encouraged. Culture is and mindset is maybe a problem, maybe a solution. I'm not sure. Omanis are very welcoming. They are very kind, etc. So when you go to counters and you apply, why you are not so welcome? It's strange, yeah. But it's for the government. It's Omanization. We need to cater for the high level of unemployment, but at the same time, we are moving very fast. We need talent, and there is a talent competition. So I think we need to create that balance very quickly with a sense of urgency, because without catering for the right talents, the whole economic cycle will not move. So we are in that dilemma, and if the cycle moves, Omanis will be employed. This is my point. It's not first this, then that. You need to take both steps at the same time. You need to make sure that the cycle moves so we can cater for more Omanis.
I mean, one of the issues that neighbouring countries face is that their own nationals who are star players, they job hop. They jump from one job to another because they're actually in demand. So in effect, they might be doing well, but the entity that they work for, the country, isn't actually doing as well as it can be because they keep losing the person to another organization. Yes.
Yes. Talking about youth, the country has, a youth, population. If I talk about Oman airports, we have under 35 years old, 80% are under 35. It's good and challenging. Good because they have energy, they'll work hard, but the challenging is that you need to make them busy, otherwise they'll make you busy. So I think we need to leverage from the youth population that we have with education.
So last comment from the floor or question, please, sir. You had your hand up earlier. Do you still have it?
Actually, my experience, which I believe I'm learning a lot today, we need to understand the emotions behind each behavior. And I ask the question, do you like the job you do? Because sometimes you invest and invest and invest, and then the results always, when you're not watching, something goes wrong. So when you ask the question, sometimes the influence of my dad wants me to be a pilot, but I don't want, my daughter to be, let's say, a pilot. I would like her to be a doctor. And then the influence starts from the family, and the peer pressure starts from the family. And then you have a doctor who's really so frustrated meeting so many patients, they would love to be an actor or singer or something else. So here there's something fundamental. Emotions drive us to behave a certain way. And like yourself, you stood in the line, waiting, to be served, and nobody really even looked at you, nobody established eye contact. It's very simple. They don't feel they are leaders. We need to make the people feel leaders. My housekeeping feel you are the most important. You've got the surgery going on there. If you don't really recognize that cleaning with this and that could create an infection, And the work of the most renowned physician is going to go down the drain. You are a leader. Without you, we are nobody. And the moment they start feel leaders, you don't need to have cameras to watch because the people jump in and do their job. But number one, do you really like that job in the first place?
So it's really that the point that was made earlier about it's a jigsaw puzzle, folks. We all fit in some way, and what we do has an effect on something else down the line. So I'm going to ask each of you very briefly, what is the one problem, briefly, one sentence, and what is your pledge to deal with it? Let's start with you.
Well, I'm on the supply side of the tourism sector. We provide the infrastructure, hotel rooms, destinations, etc. And what we're finding is that the supply side is going higher than the demand side. So we're not getting enough people into the country as tourists at this point to take advantage of that infrastructure that we're building. So what the government needs to do is to identify how best to promote brand Oman, how to create a destination marketing entity, and how the various stakeholders doing marketing in tourism, like Oman Air and Omran and Asiad, actually can get together and better promote the country as brand Oman and make the government money go further in building up the demand side of the equation.
And your pledge?
My pledge is to try to bring those stakeholders together to work on that.
And to provide the best product, essentially. I mean, that's the thing.
We have the best product already, so now we're waiting for the people.
So you've done your bit. And in your industry, please.
Our business is actually capacity constrained just now. We have a bigger market that we can actually deal with. We have to continue to expand. So for us, it's about raising capital. It's about bringing on more staff, being able to develop the business to the next level, and to do that very rapidly. And
so the question is, are you able to do this? On the back of everything that we've heard today, is that your bottleneck?
Yes, that is our bottleneck. It's speed in terms of getting things done. It's the point's been made many times, is that time is very much money. For us, if we don't take advantage of the market when it's there, then that market may not be there when we're ready to take advantage of it. So obviously for us, I mean, the pledge would be in terms of improved and increased employment, but the challenge comes almost before the pledge. If we don't get the market, then we can't provide the growth.
And is it the very basic issue of government employees processing what you need? Is that what it boils down to?
It's having that visibility going forward, and yet it's having the speed of processing. We're going through an evolution in terms of the way the organisation is changing, and it's having a consensus within government that they will help us to achieve our goals in terms of how we get the right mix of staffing to do that.
So the answer is yes. The bottleneck is the government side of things processing what you need. And what about you?
I think I'm going to go back to what I said earlier. There's a lot of things going on. There's a lot of positive things going on, and if we can now concentrate in the cascading, the training of the ground, the bottom, not the bottom. I don't like this term, but that of the execution of the decision, that would be the best pledge I could do.
And that's where the majority of people are, right?
Also.
Yeah. What's your pledge?
I think it's that we focus on training and.
So you internally is what you mean. Your focus is internal.
No, my focus. You asked towards the government. I wanted the different entities that I'm my stakeholder.
So what is it that you, from your perspective, what is the key problem that you face, and then what is your pledge to fix it or enable it to be fixed?
Increase the cascading of decision and will.
I think as a government-owned entity, I probably look at it differently. I would say my pledge is that I would be looking at opportunities of how can I attract FDI, how can I look at what manufacturing that we can do in the country, and then the challenge, I would flip it to say, well, then the challenge would be is that if I bring this in, if I bring in these opportunities, I'd like quicker decision-making and then quicker execution as a result.
Break the silos, align objectives with the real ground realities, and have a sense of urgency.
And what are you going to do about this?
I'm doing that in my own organization.
Okay.
Yes, easing up the entry to the country, whether it is tourism or business or leisure. I think we need to make sure that people entering to the country is having an easy path in and out, of course. This will leverage more in our tourism and in the commerce industry. The challenge is again, sorry to say it, but silos. And I think we need, as His Highness mentioned, we need to have one goal, one focus. Like when we said 4 years ago that we would like to be the best 20 airports by 2020, everybody was working on it, and we're going towards it. So I think we need to have a clear vision, and communication also is a big factor. We need to communicate a lot.
So really, in conclusion, I mean, the big takeaway is that it is about the doing. The time for talk will always be there. This is the time for action. You are at a fantastic crossroads where you're being hailed as one of the fastest growing economies in the region for various factors. What are you going to do about your own future? That is the key question. I do hope that you make change within your own organizations as well as ask government entities and so on for change. The big takeaway for me is cultural issues are huge. Perhaps it's removing stigma around types of jobs and so on. That'll bring about a much bigger change to the economy. Bring in the family. Everybody's on this journey together. Everybody here is on this journey, but every part of your family is on the journey too. And vocations, they're a thing to be celebrated. So don't spend on university education when you can spend on learning a skill that makes you a niche holder. Thank you very much for your time. I believe we're going to break for coffee. Am I right? Not yet. I am wrong. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for your participation.